Okay, so for me, between these two guns, I would say, I would recommend pretty recently I did my initial review on this Shadow Systems CR930X. This is the Glock 43X sized Shadow Systems clone, essentially, and it has a lot of extra bells and whistles. What it also had was a lot of malfunctions. Actually, it had one malfunction. It just had it a lot of times. And that was the slide would lock back prematurely when there were still rounds left in the magazine. I was pretty satisfied by the end of that range session that I had certainly reached the break-in point for ammo, and I know that this is a borrowed gun, and I know that the owner of the gun had also put rounds through it before he loaned it to me. Nevertheless, I do want to sort of give it a part 2 kind of a test, and I also got a lot of comments in my initial video. I mean, a lot of people were just, it's your grip, it's your grip, it's your grip. Just in case you don't know, if you're new to the channel, I've shot guns before. I've shot handguns before, and I've shot Glocks before, and the various clones thereof. So I was pretty comfortable and confident that it was not my grip. But if you don't have an open mind, you're not going to learn anything, and you're especially not going to learn anything about your own mistakes. So I do want to have an open mind about that, and I want to isolate that very much today and do a little bit more testing and see, is it my grip? And again, I'm pretty confident that it's not, but I want to demonstrate that it's not, or find out that it is. And if it is, you know, I'll get a nice big plate of crow, maybe some peas and corn on the side, and dig in. but if it's not, I expect all those people that made that comment to recant. Of course, we know that'll happen, right? All right, so I've got my second camera where it's going to show the gun in you know, pretty good full frame close up, and I've got some height on the camera pointed down so that we should be able to see this slide stop right here, and we should be able to see if any part of my hand is touching it during live fire. Oh, and just to make it more interesting, I have the Glock 43X here with me, and I'm going to make a little comparison out of it. So I'm going to shoot the 920X a bunch, or at least, you know, 50 to 100 rounds worth, and see if we have that same problem occurring. So if it doesn't happen, like if that malfunction happens 0 times today, then either one of two things has occurred. Either A, we reached a break-in and it's just worked itself out, or B, it was my grip and now I'm aware of it and I'm being careful not to have it be my grip. That's going to be the harder one to to try and point to, but it is 115 grain ball ammo from Federal, so you know, we could argue that it might like 124 grain better or whatever, but you know, I'm sorry, if you're a 9mm handgun and you don't like 115 grain, I'm not going to recommend you. So with all that said, and boy, that was a lot, off we go. First, a couple magazines through the CR930X since the last range trip. Anyway, now I'm going to start out with my normal grip, which is a 2-hand thumbs forward grip. You should be able to see that real clearly in the camera. All right, and you can see that even though this thumb is here, it is not in any way coming in contact with the gun. All right, so looking at it from that camera over there, hopefully we're satisfied that I'm not touching the gun with my thumbs, and that control is wide open. And again, magazine number 2. Maybe it was my grip. Maybe now I'm hyper attentive to my grip. Hey, maybe it was my grip before. I still don't think it was. Okay, the Glock 43X, just for fun. Okay, made it through 20 rounds with no malfunction. So, is it my grip and I've just made that correction because I'm like thinking about it? Or have I started to exceed the break-in and everything's worn in nicely? This might be a mystery that never gets solved. But I'm going to go with 2 more magazines full. Not full, actually, they hold 15 and I'm only loading them to 10 so I don't have to take off my shoes. And if I look straight down in there, you know, like I had pointed out in my initial video, I can still see that that round is, you know, canted just slightly to the left. But anyway, this time I am going to deliberately try to interfere. I'm going to put some meat up on that control while I'm shooting. So I'm going to get my I'm going to put the meaty part of my hand right up here in this control. And let's see if I can induce the malfunction by holding the grip this way. Maybe we can determine something from that. This is almost like science, isn't it? Wow, this is incredible. All right, well, I think my hand kind of slipped back into its normal grip anyway, and probably wasn't really in contact with that control after the first couple shots. But I'll try it again. Try to keep it planted up there. It's just not natural, which is goes back to my assertion that it wasn't my grip, because it's hard for me to have a grip that does actually interfere with that control. Nope. All right. 40 rounds in now. 40 rounds, no malfunction. With all the bells and whistles that the Shadow Systems gun has, you know, probably the one I noticed the most, because I have a really nice set of sights on the Glock as well. So they're different, but they're equally good. So that's not really a factor. So what I really notice when I'm shooting is that the Shadow Systems has this really nice texture, and the stock Glock has a stock Glock texture. In other words, it sucks. But I have a rubberized Talon grip on mine, so that really levels the playing field there too, because I do love a rubberized Talon grip, and they really do make up the difference. In fact, I will go as far as to say you have a lot more coverage, a lot more of the surface is covered with a good texture when you have a Talon on it than even with all that stippling. All right, Glock 43X. I should try the same thing. I'm going to try and get my odd grip here that's a little too high. You know, when I started that volley, my perception was almost that the Glock feels like it has less muzzle flip, a little bit less recoil. It's probably not true, but at the very least, it doesn't have any more, that's for sure. So if you think Shadow Systems is going to help you with recoil, then think again. This is a nice little Glock. There could be Could be an argument made for spending a lot less money and getting a Glock 43X versus the Shadow Systems, unless you just really like the extra bells and whistles. All right, well, putting another box of ammo through the 920X and no issues today. So maybe my last session, you know, I got it through the break-in, and I'm really kind of leaning that way. I don't think it was my grip. I know a lot of you said, hey, it's your grip. But in all seriousness, I don't think it was, because even when I tried to force my hand to be in contact with the slide stop control, I couldn't keep it there. It was like just not natural for me to shoot that way, and it was difficult. You know, when the gun would recoil, my grip tended to just automatically go back to its normal position. I won't rule it out. You guys could be right. Maybe it was my grip, but I don't think so, because, you know, I shoot fairly frequently and my grip is pretty consistent. Whether it's good or whether it's bad, it's consistent. And so I just don't think that that was the case. I'm more inclined to think that it was a break-in issue, and now those parts are a little more worn and it's just not happening. Let's finish up this box before the rain rolls in. So if I was having the malfunctions, my plan was to immediately go to a one-hand grip and just shoot the gun one-handed. Then there's literally no way, because it's not an ambidextrous control. There's nothing on this side. There's literally no way that, you know, with one hand that I could be touching the control. But that hasn't been necessary. But nevertheless, I'm going to go ahead and shoot one-handed for this magazine. You could probably hear that nice loud reset. Now, one thing I will say, oops, uh-oh. I wasn't done, was I? Look what just happened. Now, I wish I'd noticed that before I took the mag out, but I still have 2 rounds. There's still 2 rounds left in this magazine. I'm shooting that with one hand. So, we should have good evidence on my other camera. But even if we don't, I'd like to hear someone explain to me how it's my grip when I was shooting it with one hand. So the next comment flurry will be, oh, you were limp wristing it. No, I wasn't. All right, Glock 43X. Might as well stay with the one hand. Besides, I want to get a feel for them both. The Glock 43 feels less snappy. It really does. Just that much. Now, I've been loading the magazines with 10 rounds, just because, again, you know, easy math. But the Shadow Systems magazine will hold 15. The magazines are not interchangeable. Yes, I did try. I wanted really bad to be able to put this 15-round magazine in the Glock 43X. No good. The geometry is different enough. The Shadow Systems magazine is a little bit taller by, you know, just a couple millimeters, but it's also the geometry of the taper at the top is pretty vastly different, so not interchangeable or compatible. Okay, I've switched over my ammo to PMC bronze just for the heck of it. It's also 115 grain, but it's my experience is that it tends to be a little hotter than most domestic ammo. So everything else is basically the same, shouldn't be that much different. So I've also loaded both of the magazines all the way up, 15 rounds each, just in case there's anything about, you know, a tighter spring that could make a difference, and it could make a difference. The spring, as you know, when it's fully compressed, is tighter. There's more force pushing up. That's why the magazines are harder to load when you get those last couple rounds in there. Once you get past those 2, maybe 3, then it should even itself out. Now, if there's any engineers watching and you want to correct me on spring dynamics and say, no, if it's properly engineered, the spring should have the same amount of tension from, you know, full contraction all the way to full expansion, chime in, because I do not know the engineering behind that. But I just know what I feel. I know what I feel when I'm loading magazines and when I'm unloading magazines, and I know that there's a lot more tension when it's compressed. All right, so 15 rounds. I'm going to go 2 hands for the first magazine and 1 hand for the second magazine, just for the heck of it. And I'm just going to use my normal grip that feels comfortable to me. Okay, made it through there. Now 15 more rounds and we'll just go 1 hand. Strong hand only. Well, there you go. So, I don't know. Now, again, hold up, take your fingers off the keyboard before you start typing. You're limp wristing it. I'm telling you, I'm not. And if you want to insist that I am, I invite you to come to the range with me and you figure out whether or not I'm limp wristing. Anyway, we have a stoppage. And the only thing that happens is basically the slide has locked back. I mean, that control is all the way up in the notch. It is locked back just as if it were the last round, or just as if we had deliberately locked it back. All right, we made it to the end. So I've had what, 3? At least 2. So we've had the problem happen still a couple more times. And now this gun should be well past the break-in period. And whether a gun like this should even need a break-in is a whole different topic. But it's like, all right, well, you tell us up front you got to have a break-in, then at least, you know, it's our decision. Glock 43X. Now I will give Shadow Systems kudos on the trigger, because the Glock trigger is just a Glock trigger. Shadow Systems trigger is much better. All right, so tough to really draw a true conclusion, but it's not as much as it was the first video, my first range trip with this gun, but it still is having that malfunction intermittently. Maybe only a couple of times today, but it is a couple of times. And one time totally surprised me. I thought we were out of those woods, and well, you saw, right? I took the mag out of the gun, I was ready to switch over, and it was like, oh wait, there's still rounds. So, and the problem is, if you're trying to defend your home or yourself and you're out and about, you draw this gun, and you know, after the first round, second round, third round, or even after the 8th round, you just don't want that to happen. That is anytime the gun stops shooting, when it still has ammo available to it, that is a big problem for a self-defense gun. I mean, it's a problem for any gun, but for a self-defense gun, it could be a fatal problem. All right, so what did we learn today? I'm almost feeling like I didn't learn anything. Although I am learning that, you know, it did still have a couple of the same malfunctions, and I'm trying not to feel good about that. I mean, I don't want to say, yay, it's still doing it, so haha, I was right. But at the same time, I think that I was able to prove to myself, and hopefully the film from camera B over here will bear me out, that I did not induce those malfunctions with my grip. I didn't induce them with limp wristing. That they just, for whatever reason, that slide occasionally locks back. And again, you know, this is hundreds of rounds now through this gun. No way that should still be a break-in situation. And if it is, that's not acceptable to me personally. It might be acceptable to you. You're basically adding let's say you've got to put 300 rounds through the gun. I think they published 200. I'll correct myself if I'm wrong, but let's say you've got to put 300 rounds through the gun to feel comfortable for yourself that you've broken it in. You might as well tack that on to the price of the gun. I mean, that's not ammo you're doing anything meaningful with, right? You're just breaking the gun in. So you're just throwing rounds down range and throwing money down range. So I'm not a big fan of that anyway. I think if you're gonna make a Glock clone, make a good Glock clone. And Shadow Systems does make a good Glock clone. But this is not a long range rifle. I mean, you shouldn't have to break it in. Just my rant. That's my personal opinion. So I used to be a Glock armorer. I was actually a Glock advanced armorer. I've let that expire, and I didn't see any reason to keep renewing it. But I remember in armory school with Glock, and it is Glock who trains you, not only do they not tell you to break the gun in, they're like, yeah, don't even oil it. Just take it out of the box. You bring it home from the store, take it out of the box, go shoot it. Just leave it alone. It's fine. So it's kind of the opposite philosophy. Glock is like, hey, throw it in the mud, I don't care, shoot it. And Shadow Systems is like, oh, no, you got to wear the right brand glove, and you got to be holding your tongue just right, and you got to break it in. And that just, it is an accurate gun, but is it that much more accurate? I don't know. I don't think it is. And yeah, it's got the optics cut, but on a carry gun this size, I have no intention of putting a red dot on it anyway, really. It's just not practical to me. I mean, I could change my mind, but if I'm gonna wear this in my pocket or on a, slim inside the waistband holster, the last thing I want is to add more, even a couple ounces more weight, and certainly a lot more size to it. Something that could snag on the draw. I'm not convinced. I am convinced that every gun should by now come with an optics cut, or at least that option. I think that's where we are with optics cuts on guns. I think that's the expectation of the buyer now. It is my expectation as a buyer in general. Even if I don't want to use it, I know it's there. I know I have that option down the road. Okay, so for me, between these two guns, I would recommend the Glock 43X over the Shadow Systems, because I think for the extra money, I don't think you're really getting that much extra, Buy the Glock 43X, spend 20 bucks, throw a Talon grip on it, you're good. You're done. That's it. Upgrade the sights if you want to. All right, there's maybe another 100. But the Shadow Systems is a really nice gun. Don't get me wrong. I own Shadow Systems guns and I like them. But I think from a value perspective, I'm going to have to go with the Glock. And it's okay if you disagree with me. This is the name of the channel is Just an Opinion, and that's all that is. It's just an opinion. Hey, if you want to talk about it some more, have your people call my people. And speaking of my people, they have a song. Let me play it for you right now. It goes like that.